Okay, all ready to go. Thank you, Andy. Over to you.
Right. Hello, everybody. This is the third of the 6 lectures on Volume 3 of CapVol3 and Labour Superexploitation. And what we have done so far is establish the basic structure of CapVol3 using the influence of Hegel's science of logic to understand that structure. And what we've also looked at is the concept of labour superexploitation and how that relates in particular to the category of surplus value in Volume 1 of CapVol3. Now, what I want to do today is to establish the basis of Marx's argument in Volume 3 of CapVol3. And this is really about a problem which he was really the first to address in any systematic way, which is how surplus value becomes profit. Specifically, how the rate of surplus value is converted into the rate of profit. Now, this problem has proven to be a very hard nut to crack. And so that's why I selected the picture you can see on the first slide. It's actually engaged quite a few people, mostly men, it has to be said, for quite a long period of time. And we're still trying to crack this nut. So it's not a simple issue that we're going to look at. So that's a slight sort of warning in terms of some of the sort of the detail in the complexity. But what I hope to do is to explain what I think the problem is, and between this and the next 2 lectures outline an interpretation of how to solve it. So this is what I want to do today, is to talk a little bit about problem definition. And then I'm going to look at some of the main points taken into Volume 3 from Volume 2. And then I'm going to outline Marx's argument in Volume 3. And then I'll walk through it in a bit more detail, the first part of Volume 3, before some final sort of comments. I just need to do something with my screen. Sorry, just going to click that or something. I just need to, that's better, right? The story so far. So as I've already mentioned, my interpretation of the labour superexploitation is that it requires a third dimension of surplus value, which is required to take account of specific oppressions that are driven by capital to appropriate extra surplus value. So the argument is that it's on a similar level of significance to absolute surplus value and relative surplus value, and acts in combination with them. So this is a change in the essence of the capital-labour relation, which does then follow through into systemic contradictions. We've looked at that in Volume 1, but what about Volumes 2 and 3 and the construct of Marx's argument overall? Well, I got lots of problems, but the specific problem that I wanted to look at is the question of unequal exchange. So I think that the theoretical literature reached a kind of impasse between the orthodox Marxist position, which to my knowledge at least was first fully advanced by Palois, and the Emmanuel's explanation, which is Ricardian really, about how unequal exchange operates internationally. Unequal exchange meaning that commodities from colonized or formerly colonized countries don't command a price which reflects the value put into them to the same degree as commodities from the imperialist countries do. So there's an unequal exchange of the amount of labor effort through the market mechanism. Now, this is prompted by Marini's original contribution. He raises this in relation to Latin America and Britain, and John Smith develops this. He applies this to the current world, neoliberal globalized world, in particular in relation to cheap commodities from China, for example. Now, the argument is that labor superexploitation is an essential social relation that is the basis of the value transfer through unequal exchange. So Marini sort of unites, if you like, the question of class exploitation and its particular character in the global south with the issue of global transfer. Now, this is already a synthetic solution that combines the value that is produced by labour in one part of the world with the fact that it's realised as a profit in another part of the world. This is sort of like the overriding issue that's being addressed here, which combines production and circulation. Now, in looking to solve this problem, one discovers that it's really the fallout of another very big problem. When I say big, I mean difficult and broad in its extent. And this is known as the transformation problem, which Marx wrestled with for the last 20 years of his life. And what he realized is that in the capitalist system, commodities don't actually sell at prices which are regulated around their simple value. To state what is the socially necessary labor time is not actually the regulating price of commodities. There is a further mediation which is due to their capitalist character. Now, Marx was well aware of this when he published Volume 1. There's kind of like wormholes to the alternative universe, which once you're looking for them, you can spot them in Volume 1. And this is one of them where he actually makes explicit the point, in fact, that the average price is actually based on price of production. He doesn't explain it, but he knows that he will have to explain it as a sort of further modification of the simple law of value. This is a quite important concept, by the way. It's not that the simple law is like more right and price of production is just an amendment to it. It's more about how the foundational concept of labor value must appear in a capitalist system of production. The solution that Marx gives in Volume 3 is highly contested, and a recent contribution, it was 7 or more different solutions or interpretations were recorded. Now, Marx's solution does require more work on it. That's my view. It's full of insight. I mean, he was the first to pose the problem at all. Excuse me, and he does provide the basis of a solution, but I do think that what he left us is limited, both in its assumptions and in its completeness. That's what I will go on to argue. Now, I've shown you this slide before in the first lecture when I was trying to orientate everything that we're doing. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is, if you remember, I divide the different volumes up into sort of movements or sections. And Volume 1 has 3 main movements to it. Volume 1A, I call it, which is very well known, parts 1 and 2, which are really about the becoming of capital, a simple commodity production and circulation. And then Volume 1B, which is the central part of Volume 1, which is all about surplus value, the different dimensions of surplus value, its production, and onto its accumulation. Now, Volume 2 is about the circulation of capital as distinct from its production. And Volume 3 brings these 2 elements together. So there's a lot of inputs into Volume 3. It's kind of like a truism to say 3 comes after 1 and 2, but I will try to make explicit what the conceptual linkage between Volumes 1 and 2 is with Volume 3. And in particular, I want to say explain my view that Volume 3A, the first part of Volume 3, is really a reworking of the very beginning of Capital. It's a reworking of what is the commodity, but this time in an explicitly capitalist system. So Volume 3A, I called it, we no longer have a simple commodity, we have a capitalist commodity. So this is sort of broad brush speaking, the elements that I will be relying on. The other point to make in my sort of subdivision of the different volumes is there is a unity between the first three parts of volume 3. It's all about determinations of profit. So in the first part, it's called surplus value into profit. So we've got the posing of the problem, the setting up of the problem, which Marx then goes on to solve. And so the solution to the problem is in part 2, where Marx provides a solution which converts the rate of surplus value into a general rate of profit. I think that the first part is largely correct, and I think Engels helped in making it largely correct. I think part 2 is quite limited. It's almost the equivalent of simple reproduction before expanded reproduction. It's a first cut, a first approximation, which is quite one-sided and it's static in terms of the transformation. Now,